I'm not just telling a story, I'm telling the truth I wish I never had to witness. I am Auntie Ima, the elder sister to Martha, and I watched the day her marriage fell apart. Calabar has many sunny days, but that day, the sun hid behind the clouds as if it too was ashamed. My sister Martha and her husband Bassey were once the perfect picture, two people in love, raising two beautiful children, Michael and Sarah. But love, as I've learned, is not always enough. That evening, I stood in the corner of their living room, watching Bassey pack his clothes into a small black travel bag. He wasn't saying much, just stuffing shirts and trousers, like he was late for a flight. Martha knelt by the door, tears soaking her blouse, begging him, "Please, Bassey, don't do this. Think of the children." But he didn't look at her. He didn't even look at the children, Michael clutching his school bag, Sarah crying silently. Bassey walked out, and the door closed like a coffin. After Bassey left, the house became hollow. It wasn't just the absence of his voice, it was the absence of peace. Michael stopped asking questions. Sarah withdrew into herself, barely speaking. I tried to help Martha hold things together, but a house without a father is like a drum without skin, empty, dull, and broken. The bills piled up. Martha sold her wedding ring to pay for school fees. The landlord came knocking, his voice sharp like a cutlass. "Madam, if you can't pay, leave." But the worst part wasn't the money. It was the questions. Michael asked one night, "Auntie, why doesn't Daddy love us anymore?" I had no answer. I just held him and wept silently, praying that somehow, that God would show mercy on this shattered family. The man who once played football with Michael in the compound, who helped loose Sarah's hair on Sundays, who danced with Martha in the kitchen, he became a ghost. Martha would stare at her phone late at night, willing it to ring. But it never did. Michael grew angrier. He started drawing pictures of men with no faces. And Sarah? She grew quieter. One day, Michael lashed out at school. His teacher called, saying he fought another boy for saying his father abandoned him. When I got home, I found Michael sitting on the floor, fists clenched, eyes red. He said, "If Daddy doesn't want me, why should I care about anyone else?" My heart broke into pieces I couldn't glue back. This wasn't just about a marriage ending. It was about children crumbling inside. Martha tried to be both mother and father, but it was a losing battle. She worked 2 jobs, selling akara in the morning, sewing at night, but it was never enough. The children started wearing old clothes, eating less. Michael stopped going to school regularly, saying, "What's the point?" Sarah started coming home late, her eyes distant, her body language screaming a pain she couldn't express. Martha would sit in the dark, crying into her wrapper, whispering Bassey's name like a prayer. Sometimes I would hold her, sometimes I would just watch, helpless. Sarah, my beautiful niece, was just 14 when Bassey left. She used to be a bright, happy girl, always singing, always laughing. But after the separation, her light dimmed. One day, I found her crying alone in the backyard. I sat beside her, asking gently, "What's wrong, Sarah?" She didn't look at me. She just whispered, "It's like I don't matter. He doesn't care if I live or die." Those words pierced through me like a knife. I realized then that Sarah wasn't just sad, she was disappearing. Her grades dropped. She started dressing differently, wearing makeup to look older. I feared what she might be seeking, what kind of love she was desperate to find, all because her father walked away. Michael, once the sweetest boy, became hard like iron. He stopped doing his homework, stopped answering when Martha called him. At 16, he was skipping school, hanging around older boys who smoked and drank in the backstreets of Calabar. One day, the police brought him home. They said he was caught trying to steal from a shop. Martha broke down. She knelt before the officers, begging, "Please, he's a good boy. He's just lost." And he was. Michael wasn't a thief by nature. He was a boy crying for his father's presence, his father's approval, his father's love. Without Bassey, he was a ship without a rudder, crashing into the rocks. Martha tried to be strong, but grief is a weight that crushes even the strongest shoulders. One day, she fainted at her sewing machine. When she woke up, she whispered, "I'm tired, Ima. I don't know how much longer I can do this." Her body was failing. Her spirit was cracking. And still, no call from Bassey. No visit. No support. Just silence. I sat with her that night, holding her hand, wiping her tears. "We will survive," I told her, though I wasn't sure we would. Martha nodded, but her eyes were empty. A mother can only fight so long before the battle consumes her. Then the rumors started. Bassey had remarried. He was living in Port Harcourt with a new wife, raising a new family. Pictures surfaced on social media, Bassey smiling, holding a baby, wearing a new agbada. Martha saw it, and she didn't say a word. She just sat quietly, the phone shaking in her hands. Sarah saw it too. She stormed out of the house and didn't come back for hours. Michael punched a hole in the wall. I stood in the kitchen, clutching the counter, wondering how one man's choices could destroy so many lives. I wish I could say things got better, but they didn't. They got worse. Sarah fell into the hands of a man who promised her love but left her with pain. Michael was arrested again, this time for a more serious crime. And Bassey? He never looked back. Never called. Never sent money. Never asked about the children he left behind. As I tell this story, my tears soak this paper, and my heart bleeds for every child who has felt the sting of an absent father. Because when a father walks away, it's not just the mother who suffers. It's the whole family that pays the price. Michael, the once sweet boy who used to chase butterflies in the compound, changed before our eyes. It started small, coins missing from Martha's purse, a neighbor's mangoes plucked without permission. At first, we thought it was childish mischief, but it wasn't. The day Michael came home with a torn shirt, bruises on his arms, and a phone far too expensive for a boy like him, I knew something was wrong. Martha questioned him, but he brushed her off with a glare that didn't belong to a child. He said, "It's none of your business. Daddy is gone, so I'll take care of myself." That night, I heard Martha weeping in her room, the sound of her sobs filling the house like a funeral song. By the time Michael was 18, he had joined a group of older boys who smoked, drank, and whispered about hustling in dark corners of Calabar. Martha begged him to stay in school, but Michael said, "School is for people with fathers. I need to make money." So, he stopped attending classes. Teachers stopped calling. The boy who once loved reading storybooks by the window now roamed the streets, searching for what he had lost: approval, guidance, and love. I tried to talk to him, but he pushed me away. "Auntie Ima, you're not my mother, and my father is gone. Leave me alone." The pain in his voice was sharp, like a knife cutting through my heart. I sat in my small room that night, praying to God, please don't let this boy's life end in the streets. But I could see it already. Bassey's absence was dragging Michael into the darkness. Sarah, Martha's daughter, was always the quieter one. While Michael grew loud and angry, Sarah grew small and silent. She stopped asking questions, stopped playing with her friends, and stopped smiling. Most days, she sat by the window, staring at the gate like she was waiting for someone. I knew who. One day, I tried to comfort her, but she pulled away and whispered, "Auntie Ima, maybe if I had been a better daughter, Daddy wouldn't have left." Kai. Those words tore at me like a jagged blade. No child should carry such guilt, but Sarah did quietly without tears, just a hollow look in her eyes that said she had given up. Sarah's pain showed up in different ways. She became fearful of loud noises, always flinching when someone raised their voice. When she started secondary school, her grades dropped. Her teachers called concerned, but Martha, already overwhelmed, couldn't keep up. One day, Sarah came home late, her uniform torn, her face pale. When I asked what happened, she shook her head, refusing to speak. I had a sick feeling in my stomach, but I didn't press her. I regret that now. Looking back, I realized Sarah was a girl trying to fill a hole that could never be filled, a hole shaped like her father. And every day, she grew closer to drowning in it. Martha was a mother holding on by threads, working 2 jobs, managing a home, and trying to be both parents to her children. But a body can only take so much. One humid afternoon, while frying puff puff for sale, she suddenly clutched her chest and collapsed. I was the one who found her, lying on the floor, her eyes wide with fear, her breath shallow. We rushed her to the health center, and the doctor shook his head gravely. Her blood pressure is too high. She needs rest. Rest? For a woman carrying the weight of a broken family on her shoulders, rest was a luxury she couldn't afford. After that, Martha grew weaker. She moved slower, spoke softer. Michael barely noticed, too busy chasing shadows. Sarah tried to help, but she was just a child. I took on what I could, but I couldn't replace the father they needed. One night, as I helped Martha into bed, she looked at me and whispered, "Ima, I feel like I'm fading." I held her hand tightly and lied, "You're strong, Martha. You'll get through this." But inside, I was breaking. How much more could one woman bear before she crumbled completely? One evening, as I cleaned Sarah's room, I found a crumpled piece of paper hidden under her mattress. It was a letter written in shaky handwriting, addressed to Daddy. I read it, my hands trembling. "Dear Daddy, I miss you so much. I try to be good, but I think you left because I wasn't good enough. I wish I could see you again. I want to tell you that I'm sorry for whatever I did. Please come back. Please. I love you." I sank onto the bed, tears flowing freely. This wasn't just a child missing her father. This was a cry for help, a silent scream from a little girl who thought her worth was measured by a man's presence. I showed Martha the letter, and she broke down, wailing like a wounded animal. We knew then that Sarah wasn't just sad, she was broken in ways we couldn't see. It finally happened. The knock came at night, loud, angry. It was the police. They had come for Michael. He was caught stealing from a store with a group of boys. Martha collapsed when they told her. I ran after the officers, begging, "Please, he's just a boy. Please." But they pushed me aside, dragging Michael away in handcuffs. His eyes were wild, his face hard. He didn't even look at Martha. He didn't look at me. He just stared into the dark, as if daring it to swallow him whole. At the station, the officer in charge looked at us with disgust. This is what happens when boys have no fathers to guide them. His words stung because they were true. Martha pleaded, begged, but there was only so much we could do. Michael was released after 2 days, but something inside him had hardened forever. He came home, dropped his bag, and locked himself in his room. Martha sat on the floor, sobbing, "Where did I go wrong?" But we both knew this wasn't her fault alone. It was Bassey's too. And yet, he was nowhere to be found. One evening, Sarah didn't come home. Martha waited by the door, pacing, glancing at the clock every 5 minutes. I joined her, fear rising in my throat. When it got dark, we went searching, asking neighbors, calling her friends. No one had seen her. It wasn't until late that night we got a call. Sarah was found at a man's house, far from home. A man in his 30s. When we got there, she sat on a chair, her arms crossed, her face empty. Martha broke down. She grabbed Sarah, holding her tight, crying, "What are you doing here?" But Sarah didn't cry. She just stared at the floor, her voice flat, "He makes me feel special. Like I matter." That night, I lay awake, haunted by her words. This was what happens when fathers walk away. Girls look for love in the wrong arms. Boys rebel against the world. And mothers? They drown in silent tears, praying for miracles that may never come. Martha's health continued to decline. One day, she collapsed while cooking, spilling hot oil on her leg. We rushed her to the hospital, and the doctor shook his head. Her body is failing. She's overworked, stressed. She needs serious care. But where would that care come from? Bassey was gone. Michael was lost. Sarah was drifting. It was me, just me, holding this broken family together with hands that were trembling. As I sat in the waiting room, I thought of Bassey, wherever he was. Did he know that his children were crumbling? That his wife was fading? That his absence was like a curse poisoning everything? I wanted to scream at him, to drag him back by the collar, to make him see the ruin he left behind. But he was gone, and the damage was already done. Sarah came home one evening with bruises on her arm. When I asked her what happened, she said nothing, just shook her head and went to bed. But I knew. She was getting into something dangerous, something that would shatter her completely if we didn't stop it. Martha tried to talk to her, but Sarah snapped, shouting, "You don't understand. Nobody cares about me." Then she stormed out, slamming the door. Martha sat on the couch, sobbing into her hands. I tried to comfort her, but I felt the weight too. How do you save a child drowning in pain you didn't create? Sarah wasn't just seeking love, she was seeking her father's approval in the arms of strangers, and it was tearing her apart. That night, I sat alone, praying for a miracle, wondering if it would ever come. Then one day, a call came. A strange voice on the line, saying Sarah had been rushed to the hospital after an overdose. Martha collapsed immediately. I felt like the floor had been pulled from under me. We rushed to the hospital, where Sarah lay pale, hooked up to machines, her life hanging by a thread. The doctor said she had taken pills, too many. Martha sat in the corner, rocking back and forth, wailing, "It's Bassey's fault. He broke us." And she wasn't wrong. This wasn't just a mother's pain or a daughter's mistake. It was the ripple effect of a father's absence, spreading through generations like poison. And yet, there was no Bassey to hold accountable. While we prayed for Sarah's recovery, Michael was nowhere to be found. He had disappeared again. Days later, we got the news. He had been arrested in a robbery gone wrong. This time, it wasn't a slap on the wrist. The charges were serious. This was it. The family Bassey abandoned was now in ruins. One child in a hospital bed, fighting for life. Another in a prison cell, facing years behind bars. And the mother? Fading away, piece by piece, like smoke. Martha sat in the hospital waiting room, her face pale, her body trembling. It was as if the years of struggle, the nights without sleep, and the endless burden of being both mother and father had finally caught up with her. I watched as she clutched her chest, whispering, "Lord, take me if you must, but save my children." The doctors told her to rest, but how could she? One child was in a hospital bed, another behind bars. Every mother's nightmare was her reality. That night, I held her as she wept like a child, her tears soaking my wrapper. She asked me the question that haunted us both, "What did I do wrong, Ima? Was I not enough?" And I had no answer. The truth was painful. Martha had fought like a lioness, but a mother cannot fill the space of a missing father. And in that moment, I realized that no matter how strong a mother is, her children still need their father's presence, love, and guidance. The absence of Bassey had left wounds that Martha's love, as deep as it was, could never fully heal. Michael's court date arrived like a dark storm cloud. Martha and I sat in the back of the courtroom, holding hands, praying for mercy. When Michael was brought in, wearing the prison uniform, his eyes were hollow. He barely glanced at us. As the judge read the charges, Martha sobbed quietly. I watched her hands tremble, her knuckles white from gripping her wrapper. Michael's lawyer tried to argue for leniency, blaming peer pressure, poverty, and broken family structure. The judge listened but looked unmoved. When the sentence came, 2 years in prison, Martha collapsed in the courtroom, her cries echoing in the walls. Michael was led away in handcuffs, and I saw something break in him. The boy who once played football in the yard was gone. And all I could think was, if Bassey had been here, if he had been present, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Maybe Michael wouldn't have gone looking for belonging in the wrong places. Maybe this family wouldn't be sitting in a courtroom, shattered. Sarah survived, but she was not the same. She returned home from the hospital looking like a shadow of herself, thin, quiet, and withdrawn. Martha tried to draw her close, but Sarah seemed distant, as if part of her had been left in that hospital room. One day, I found her staring at her reflection, tears running down her face. "Auntie Ima," she whispered, "do you think Daddy would care if I died?" I sat her down and held her face in my hands. "Sarah, your life is precious. Your father's choices don't define you. Don't let his absence become your end." But she just stared at me with empty eyes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing her words over and over. Would Daddy care if I died? It was a question no child should ever have to ask. Months passed, and then one evening, as the sun dipped low over Calabar, Bassey appeared. He walked into the compound like a stranger, his clothes neat, his face older, his eyes unsure. Martha stood at the doorway, frozen. Sarah came out, saw him, and ran back inside. Bassey looked at me, guilt heavy in his eyes. "I heard about Michael, about Sarah, about everything," he said. My anger boiled. "You heard? That's all you did here? While your children broke, you built a new life elsewhere." He tried to explain, stammering about mistakes, regret, and the past. But his words fell like water on stone. Martha just stared at him, tears running down her face. She whispered, "You left, Bassey. You left, and we all paid the price." And for once, Bassey had no words. That night, we sat as a family for the first time in years. Martha, Bassey, Sarah, and me. Michael was missing, locked away, but his absence sat between us like an empty chair. Sarah refused to speak. Martha's hands trembled as she spoke. Bassey, do you see what you've done? Your absence has been a knife in our hearts. Bassey broke down. He wept like a child, saying over and over, I'm sorry. I thought I was escaping a broken marriage, but I see now, I broke my children. It was raw, painful, and heavy. I wept too, because I knew that even though he was here now, the damage had already been done. And some wounds leave scars that no apology can erase. 2 years later, Michael returned from prison. He was taller, leaner, but his eyes held a hardness that no boy should carry. Martha hugged him, sobbing, but he stood stiff, arms by his sides. Sarah watched from a distance, unsure how to feel. Bassey tried to speak, but Michael cut him off. Don't talk to me. You weren't there when I needed you. You don't get to act like a father now. His words were sharp, bitter. I saw the pain etched in his face, the weight of abandonment. Bassey stood there, speechless, tears in his eyes. And I realized in that moment that even when a father returns, sometimes the damage is already deep, and healing is a slow, painful process. The reunion wasn't joyful. It was awkward, tense, and fragile, like a cracked mirror trying to hold together. Sarah never fully recovered. She kept her distance from men, flinching when they spoke too loudly. She became withdrawn, battling depression in silence. Bassey tried to make amends. He brought gifts, paid school fees, and showed up at family gatherings. But it was too late. The children were grown, their wounds deep. Michael barely acknowledged him, and Sarah couldn't bring herself to call him daddy anymore. One day, Bassey sat with me and asked, Ima, is there any way to fix this? I looked at him, tears in my eyes, and said, you can't erase the past, Bassey, but you can be present now. It won't be easy, but they need you, even if they don't know it yet. He wept like a man who had just realized the cost of his actions. And I thought, this is the face of a man who broke his own home with his hands. It was too late to go back, but maybe, just maybe, there was still time to stop the bleeding. Healing came, but slowly. Bassey kept showing up, week after week, trying to earn back trust. Michael softened, bit by bit, though the scars remained. Sarah allowed Bassey to visit her during her university convocation, but she stood stiffly beside him in pictures. Martha forgave, not because she forgot, but because bitterness is a heavy load for a mother to carry. We began to see small signs of change. Michael got a job. Sarah started volunteering with girls who had experienced family loss. The wounds were still there, but they began to heal, not completely, but enough for us to breathe again. And through it all, I watched, holding this family in my heart, grateful for the tiny flickers of hope that refused to die. Years passed. Michael, though working now, kept his distance from his father. They would sit in the same room but barely speak. Sarah, now in her mid-20s, had blossomed into a woman, yet there was a fragility in her eyes that never fully left. I could see it when she smiled. There was always a hint of sadness, like a cloud behind the sun. Bassey tried, oh how he tried. But some things, once broken, can never be fully fixed. That's the harsh truth. A father's absence leaves a hole no money, no gifts, no apologies can ever truly fill. Michael battled his demons silently. He worked at a mechanic's shop, hands grease-stained, face hardened. But inside, he was still that boy longing for his father's approval. One evening, I saw him pacing outside, fists clenched, breathing hard. I asked what was wrong, and he exploded. I hate him, Auntie Ima. I hate that he left us, that he left Mum to suffer, that he left me to grow up in the streets. I held him as he shook with rage, tears mixing with sweat. It's okay to be angry, I whispered, but don't let that anger ruin you. You're more than your father's mistakes. He didn't answer. He just stared into the dark, silent. And in that moment, I prayed that his anger wouldn't swallow him whole, that somehow he would find peace, even if Bassey never fully earned it. After some times, Sarah got married. Her wedding day was a bittersweet day. She looked radiant in her white gown, her eyes shimmering with both joy and something else, something like a quiet ache. Bassey was there, wearing a crisp suit, standing like a guest rather than a father. He walked her down the aisle, yes, but their hands barely touched. The air between them was heavy with years of absence, silent apologies, and unspoken pain. As she said her vows, I watched Martha's face, a mixture of pride and sadness. After the ceremony, Sarah hugged me tight and whispered, "Thank you for being the one who never left." I held her close, wishing her father's arms had been the first place she found comfort. But it was too late for that now. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. When Michael became a father, something shifted. Holding his baby boy in his arms, he stared at the child with wide eyes, as if seeing the world for the first time. I sat beside him and asked gently, "How do you feel?" His voice cracked as he whispered, terrified, "What if I become like him?" I put my hand on his shoulder and said, "Then choose to be different. Be the father you needed." That was the moment Michael's heart began to soften. He started coming home earlier, spending time with his child, and slowly, brick by brick, rebuilding what Bassey had torn down. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. One evening, Bassey handed me a letter. It was addressed to his children. In it, he poured out his heart, his regrets, his shame, his love. He wrote, "I left not because I didn't love you, but because I was a coward. I thought running away would fix my problems, but all I did was break you. I'm sorry. If you can find it in your hearts, forgive me. If you can't, I will understand. But know that I love you always." I gave the letter to Michael and Sarah. They read it in silence. Neither cried, but I saw a flicker in their eyes, an acknowledgement of the pain, perhaps a sliver of release. They didn't say much, but that night, Sarah called Bassey and simply said, "Good night, Dad." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a full embrace. But it was something. A crack in the wall. Martha's health continued to fade. On her final night, she called for Michael and Sarah. They knelt by her bed, and she placed her trembling hands on their heads. "No matter what, don't let this pain define you. Build a better family. Break the cycle." She looked at Bassey, her voice weak but clear. "You failed us, Bassey. But if you still have life, make it right, whatever you can." And with that, she closed her eyes for the last time. The room fell into a stillness so heavy, it felt like the walls were holding their breath. The burial was quiet, simple. Family and neighbors came. Bassey stood beside Michael, who stiffened but did not move away. Sarah wept quietly, holding my hand. As the red Calabar earth covered Martha's coffin, I felt a deep ache, like a book closing with too many chapters left unwritten. After the service, Bassey stood before the small crowd and spoke. His voice trembled. "I failed my family. But I'm still here, and I will spend the rest of my days making it right." It wasn't enough, but it was a start. And as the sun set over the hills, I prayed that perhaps, just perhaps, healing could still come. Years later, Michael told me, "Auntie Ima, I still struggle with anger. Sometimes, I look at my son and I fear I'll mess him up like my father did to me." Sarah, now a mother herself, confided, "I still flinch when my husband raises his voice. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust." These were the ripples of Bassey's choices, small waves of pain that would take years, maybe lifetimes, to smooth. But there was also growth. Michael showed up for his son's football games. Sarah read bedtime stories to her daughter every night. They were trying. That's what mattered. They were trying to be the parents they never had. Slowly, a new family was taking shape. Michael and Sarah didn't fully forgive Bassey, but they allowed him into their lives, bit by bit. He attended birthday parties, graduations, and even Sunday dinners. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And sometimes that's all a family needs, a willingness to try again. One evening, as we sat on the veranda, watching the sunset over Calabar, Michael turned to Bassey and said, "You were absent, but you're here now. Don't waste it." Bassey nodded, his eyes wet with unshed tears. It wasn't the ending we had dreamed of, but it was a beginning. And sometimes, beginnings are all we get. Now, as I sit and share this story, as I watch the younger ones grow, I speak from my heart. I speak from a place of deep pain and deeper wisdom, especially as we celebrate Children's Day. Parents, hear me. Don't walk away from your children. Don't let your pride, your pain, or your anger rob them of the love they deserve. You don't stop being a father because you failed as a husband. And mothers, remember, your pain is valid, but your child's need for their father is too. Don't poison your children with your bitterness, and don't walk away from your children because of your guilt. Stay in the fight, for them. Fathers, your presence is not optional. It's oxygen. And mothers, don't let bitterness against a man rob your children of their father. Protect their hearts, even when yours is breaking. Children need both parents, not perfect, but present. So whether you are the father who strayed, or the mother who slammed the door, fix it. Because children don't care who is right. They just want both parents to stay in the fight. And if we fail them, the price is too high, paid in broken hearts, lost years, and futures that could have been. When a father walks away, or when a mother shuts the door, the children pay the highest price. And no matter how much you apologize later, the years you weren't there are years you can never get back. This is our story. Let it be a warning. Let it be a call to action. Let it be a prayer for families everywhere. So to every parent, I say, choose the child. Always choose the child. Because their future is your true legacy. Happy Children's Day.